is where she directed the community and nature's rights programs for 12 years.
Hey, Kara.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot to start the recording. And could you maybe back up a little bit for the recording? Do a little repetition, thanks.
Sure. Okay. So Shannon co-founded Movement Rights with Penny Opal Plant in 2014, and they work with tribes and communities of color to align human laws with the laws of the natural world. And prior to that, she directed the Community and Nature Rights Program for Global Exchange for 12 years. At that time, she was among a handful of US organizers to articulate the ideas that had become a viable vibrant global movement for rights in nature. She's the co-founder and executive committee member of the Global Alliance for the Rights in Nature, and both of the links for these organizations are in the chat. Movements Right is a climate justice organization, and it works with national and global climate allies, sovereign Indigenous nations and communities, and they have helped thousands of people connect the dots between critical time we find ourselves in and the solutions that Indigenous people have always known. Human activity must take place within the natural law system of laws that govern life on Earth. So that was pretty much reading Shannon's bio. Figured that's safe. I could talk about that. But I was trying to think of something interesting, and Shannon had actually met Prince Charles in India. And I thought that was a cool story because she has a coaster on her table that they have a picture of her with Prince Charles, and she keeps it right there. But Shannon, I'm hoping that you can talk to us a little bit about what you're doing with Movement Rights, what's exciting you about what's going on there, any thrilling news, and I'm hoping that you're going to give us good news about Oklahoma.
I am. I'm happy to. Thank you for reading that. It's always weird, when somebody reads your bio, resume, sort of a thing, and you think, wow, that person sounds so accomplished. Who's that? Because it doesn't really sound much like me. I look at the faces on this webinar or this meeting group, and I see all of the people that are, we're all connected. We're all building this work together, whether we've formally met or not. So I first want to thank Kara for inviting me to this conversation. I've been really looking forward to it, and I've been really looking forward to seeing the faces of all of the people who've been pushing this work forward, as well as seeing some old and getting older friends. Ben, you know who you are. Tish, of course, doesn't get any older. So yeah, and she's, so cool with her glasses on there. So and my friends up from Oregon, and it's really cool to have been doing this work with some of you, seen and unseen, for so long. A movement is we're all in this together. So all of the things that I've done are also have been informed and buoyed by the work that all of you have done in each of your states to bring this work forward and to bring this to life. And I remember one day, we talked about someday there would be this, national network of groups. And it seemed like such a dream, although Tish, to her credit, has said that she thought we'd have, toppled the existing structure of law by now. So I guess we better get started working on that really, really fast to meet Tish's deadline of last week. So I first started doing this work, I was at Global Exchange. The first person I met that was involved in this work was Ben Price many years ago. Although his hair was still white, and he still had that impish grin that he's wearing now. And Penny Opal Plant, who is my partner at Movement Rights, we also met around these ideas and around this work. Penny is an Indigenous woman from Richmond, California, right in the shadow of the Chevron refinery. We really resonated with this work, and in fact met around these great ideas around 2006 or 7. And so it's just been the inspiration for my life has been meeting people and from all over the world. Now we have this global movement of rights of nature. In particular, that aspect of it has internationalized, and we see largely Indigenous peoples moving this work forward at the global level, because the idea of rights of nature really comes from this Indigenous cosmology, this Indigenous understanding of humans are not separate from nature. We are part of it. We are not owners of it. And those are, these are the ideas that all of you and all of us are pushing against, this system of law that sees nature as property and sees our communities as these, children of the state that get told by corporations what we can and can't do, and what our quality of life is going to be. And so, it takes revolutionary thinking to sort of undo that. And I think part of when I left Global Exchange to form Movement Rights, we'd worked in California as doing the same work all of you are doing. We passed ordinances in California and Santa Monica and Mendocino County with the help of CELDF. And it's gotten harder to pass ordinances in California because, they're definitely wise to us, and getting things on the ballot is really now been the challenge. We've faced 3 communities who've been kicked off the ballot by a judge before we even get that far, when they're just trying to put things on the ballot here in California. And we've had some communities that have wanted to continue to fight that. But honestly, the last few years of fire season here in California, and as you know, in Oregon, really has changed a lot of the organizing. It really has interrupted. Climate change itself has interrupted some of that momentum here in California. And so we've taken part of the opportunity to also shift how we're working with communities here in California, and with tribes across the US. So when we formed Movement Rights, it was to continue to work with community rights, and we still do assist communities in doing that. But these days, a lot of our work is also trying to shift the way that community rights and rights of nature leaders, and what that leadership looks like, at least for us here in California. Our board and our team, I'm the only non-Indigenous, I'm the only white person on Movement Rights team. And our work is led by the collective of folks that we work with. We are fortunate enough to work with Casey Camp Hornick, who is an elder in the Ponca tribe of Oklahoma. The Ponca tribe is somewhat northern Oklahoma. And I put in the chat an article that she wrote in January of this year in The Independent that really describes, there's definitely a different history than many of us here on this call have in terms of our relationship with the earth and our relationship with the government. And the Ponca live in I think I've traveled around the world and I've seen a lot of pretty disastrous spots. I feel like the fracking and injection well and refinery and pipeline epicenter is right there on Ponca land. If you want to do a toxic tour, you can do it standing in one place and just sort of, turn around. You don't actually have to go anywhere. You can see, oil rigs and derricks and bubbling crude coming up on farmland. The south side of Ponca City, a town that was named for after the Ponca settled there. They were forced off of their initial homeland near Standing Rock at gunpoint. In fact, Casey Camp Hornick's grandfather was one of the people who survived the Trail of Tears to where they now live in Oklahoma. And they chose the spot they now live. It was open territory. It was not a state yet, because the meeting of the two rivers, the Arkansas and the Salt Fork Rivers, which is a tributary of the Arkansas, reminded them very much of their original homeland and on the banks of the Missouri River up north near Standing Rock. And that's why they made that their new home. And then the state and the city of Ponca City grew around the tribe. And on the south side of, and of course, at one time their territory was much larger. But like all treaties with the US government, their land has been sort of continually taken away from them. And if you go to Ponca City, if you go to the north end of Ponca City, you don't see any, it looks like a cute little town. You don't see any of those ugly impacts. It's when you get to the south side of town where the Ponca tribe live, that's when you start to see everything that you never ever want to see. It's now the home of KXL goes through there. The Phillips 66 refinery is there. They have thousands of miles of pipelines under their feet. Injection wells have been so plentiful there that they became the fracking capital of, the earthquake capital of the world, owing to injection wells and fracking. And that's supposed to be California. That's supposed to be our claim to fame, the earthquakes. But these are definitely different, and also that their communities aren't built for that kind of. They weren't supposed to have earthquakes there, so their homes aren't built for it. And we all know what happens with earthquakes and fracking and concrete and all that. So their water is poisoned. The Ponca tribe have to buy their water. They have to, you can't grow organic food within 16 miles. They can't carry on traditional hunting and fishing in the area because everything is so poisoned in that area. And we first, when I first met Casey and spoke with her about the rights of nature, she had heard of it and she wasn't really a big fan of the rights of nature because I think she saw it as, you know, as many tribal communities do, that this is another, oh, the white man's bringing us a solution. This is, you know, more, you know, tell us, give us more promises about how you're going to protect our land. And so we had a long conversation about it, and I talked to her about, you know, worldwide, this movement, the rights of nature, is led primarily by Indigenous communities. And it's because rights of nature has its roots in its understanding of a cosmology of humans being a part of and not owners of this system of life, and that, you know, these aren't natural resources to be used by humans. These are sources of life. And so from that point on, we began to work together. She joined the tribal council in order to become the first tribe to work with her community and her tribe to become the first tribe in the US to recognize rights of nature on tribal land in 2017. And there were others that had already started and been thinking about it and putting resolutions, but they were the first to actually put it into law. And as we all know, many tribes across the US and now Canada have also adopted rights of nature laws. And I think what's important for movement rights in terms of, we have focused a lot on the connection between Indigenous rights and rights of nature and Indigenous cosmology, because when you look at things like Standing Rock and what happened there a few years ago, it is Black and Brown and Indigenous people who put their lives on the line to protect the earth first. And it is part of their heritage and their responsibility to take care of the places where they've always lived, or in the case of the Ponca, where they moved to or were forced to move to. And they take that responsibility really as a spiritual responsibility, not just a legal responsibility or, you know, sort of a trick of the law. And they, you know, much like, you know, small farmers do, they have a relationship with that land. And they put that and prioritize that first. And they have a lot to teach us non-Indigenous folks about how to live in balance, even in modern times. I know a lot of people have said, you know, well, are we supposed to go back and live in teepees and huts and things like that? And it's not really about that, but it is about really understanding the Indigenous and how do we sometimes some people call it re-indigenize ourselves to become more closely connected to the places where we live, where when the government says you can't have that or you can't stop that, we don't take no as an answer. You know, we keep going. So if we can't pass laws in California or get things on the ballot, what are we willing to do? What is the next step? What is enforcing the rights of nature or community rights look like when you don't even get to put it on the ballot? and vote for it and have the, you know, the clash of ideas. And Indigenous people and people of color have been leading a lot of that kind of work. I mean, the civil rights struggle, you know, that wasn't a legal struggle. That was a spiritual, that was a, you know, that was just, you know, breathing those rights deep into your soul. And it has been an amazing honor to work with as many tribes as we have and do around the world. And that Casey Camp Hornick of the Ponca has been such a powerful Indigenous leader for this work within Indigenous tribes. In many ways, the Ponca have made it sort of okay to see this as a law that they own, that this is tribal law, that this is Indigenous cultural heritage put into Western legal framework, and that works for them. And I'm gonna spill the tea about what happens tomorrow. You're the first to know that the Ponca tribe tomorrow will sign into law the recognition of those two rivers, the Arkansas River and the Salt Fork River, as rivers that are no longer property, that own themselves, and that the Ponca Women's Society, called the Padata Society, which you know, it was interesting. Part of the delay in getting this passed was they're like, do you have any paperwork on that society? I'm like, well, let's see, it goes back about, you know, 30,000 years or something. So no, we don't really have a lot of paperwork on it. The Padata Society, for which Casey is the traditional drum keeper, the Women's Society have always been the keepers of the waters. That has been their role since time immemorial. And so they feel it's a natural next step for them to begin to take this guardianship of these rivers and to begin to ask the questions, how do we protect these rivers within tribal law, but within customary law? How do we begin to exercise those rights? And they are working on constitutional change, which is going to take a little bit of time. I think all tribes across the US are very excited to see Deb Haaland as the Secretary of the Interior, the first Indigenous woman to hold that position. And that means she has oversight over the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is been sort of a linchpin about how far constitutions can go. And so there's a lot of hope that we can push things on the legal front through that side. But in the meantime, I'll be driving out to Oklahoma next week from California to attend the ceremonial launch. There'll be a water ceremony at the greeting on the banks of these two rivers. And this isn't really just about ceremony. This is about the Women's Society learning how to do water testing, to identify particular threats of fracking and fossil fuel activity along the rivers, and to work with tribes up and down the rivers to begin to, whether it's direct action, whether it's, you know, ceremony, whether it's to be working on legislation, or, you know, all levels, to begin to take the protection of these rivers in a very new direction that is rooted in their sacred connection as people who've lived there for and tribes who've lived there for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, So it's a really large undertaking, and they were inspired by the work by the folks in Toledo. We inspire, all of us inspire each other. They were inspired by, we brought a delegation to New Zealand to visit the Maori and their guardianship model for the rights of the Wanganui River, and learn how are they, what does that mean? How do you begin to be a guardian of a river? Is it just ceremonial, or do you actually begin to take over some of the things that the government has been doing, only doing it differently? We're based on a more holistic understanding of how rivers work and how corrupt the regulatory system is that allows the complete and utter destruction of our rivers, of our ecosystems, of our climate. So anyway, I'm really excited to be able to share with you that special early announcement before the news officially breaks tomorrow, that we will have 2 new rivers recognized as rights holders in Oklahoma, and the start of a very large project undertaken by a number of tribes, we hope, in that area, and to begin to connect also with the communities along the way. So they could be joining the CRN next, who knows? So that's sort of a story of the way that our work looks. I think the other thing to say is that we work a lot with, as a climate justice organization, we've shifted a lot of our work to say that when people contact us for trainings and workshops, that we're beginning to shift, who the people who go to, say, a democracy school or a training that all of you put on, the folks that get that, have those workshops, they're usually the first people to start the campaigns. And then later they're like, oh, we should ask the tribes around us if this, if they'll sort of sign on to this, or the affected communities. In Sonoma County, we're working with groups there that were talking about the migrant farm workers, but none of the migrant farm workers were part of the campaign. So we're working to sort of recenter some of our work to make sure that from the very beginning, that when we even start with the training, that we start with a room full of people who really reflect what the community looks like, and who the people are that are most affected in the community. And it's been a learning for us as well, as we begin to move and shift in this way. But for us, it feels really good and really right, the right thing to do for us in the way that we work with communities, and to begin to also recognize that young people and people of color have a real leadership role to play, especially looking at climate justice, environmental justice, because it's usually the worst stuff is cited in those low-income communities of color, at least in California. That's our experience here. So our global work with the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature has also been an exciting piece of learning how rights of nature looks from the perspective of people around the world, and how do we incorporate those exciting ideas and connect to each other, because we do learn from each other. And everywhere I go, I can definitely say that I learned something. And if we were to all take turns right now on this call, and I was then listening to you, we all have so much to share from our experiences. So I'm just one of the, the many people on this call that are, learning lessons along the way, and we're doing this work together. So I'm really thrilled to be here, and I think I'll shut up now. Don't laugh, Ben, I can do it.
Good job, Shannon. Shannon, one thing that we talked about a lot is, the understanding of white people and the understandings of the Indigenous people. What have you learned in your journeys? Because I know we've had some fantastic conversations about that, and I was wondering if you'd share your thoughts.
Sure. So, I mean, I think as somebody I've worked in the global climate justice arena for my entire adult life, not necessarily doing this work. This is where I find my home, and my center, where I really found my way of contributing to that. Excuse me, to that work. And what I've found around the world is that the connection of really seeing, letting go of the idea of we are owners of nature. We are, as Casey says, we are not humans protecting nature. We are nature protecting itself. And it isn't just a saying. When I went to New Zealand, the Wanganui Iwi tribe, they have a saying. I won't butcher it in Maori. I've done that before, but it says, from the mountain to the sea, I am the river, and the river is me. And they really understand that these rivers are their ancestors. Rivers in Panka are feminine entities. And so, of course, the Women's Society would be the ones to be responsible for caretaking of that. And they really see it as a natural output of, women's bodies are contain more water, that we as women are able to give birth in water, and that connection with water is something that is part of the creation story of the relationship between the rivers and the Panka women. And in New Zealand, or they call it Aotearoa, they also see that rivers and mist and rain are feminine, and mountains are male. But one of the things that really struck me when talking with the Wanganui was the settlement agreement that they reached, which recognized the Wanganui as the first river in the world to own itself, was that the river is their source of their spiritual being as a people. And as long as it was in bondage, in chains, as property, they really couldn't even, it was keeping them in bondage as well. That who they are is so defined by the river itself, that the connection between who they are as a people is completely wrapped up in this river, and has always been since the beginning of time. I mean, these are the first peoples of these lands, and that's true pretty much anywhere you go, which isn't to say that you won't find colonized there isn't anybody who hasn't, where colonization hasn't crept in. And to, I'm not trying to idealize or fantasize about Indigenous people, and there are many tribes that have, our system of law worked very hard to colonize the Indigenous people and change bring Christianity, to steal children, send them to, Indigenous schools, and where speaking their language was a crime, and everything from smallpox blankets to removing them from their lands to everything else that has been done for tribes have left them also very impoverished, and unable to care for themselves in the natural ways historically that they have done. And some tribes more than other have also benefited and and sold their land in order to for fossil fuel activities or nuclear testing or whatever it is, so that they can, they see it as a way to help their people out of poverty. And in some cases, some people in the tribes get rich while everyone else, suffers. So it's not to romanticize, it's about saying that that we're all in the process of decolonization. This is all part of the journey we're all on, and that Indigenous people have a lot to teach us about what life can be like living in a kind of balance, even in the modern world, even with climate change, even with iPhones and Zoom and everything else. That there are lessons that many tribes have, and traditions that many tribes have kept, that enable us also to find our connection as humanity to the earth itself, to be able to feel the damage that's been done in a personal way, and to take responsibility for the caretaking in a way that says we're not going to stop. And if you want to turn water cannons on us, and police dogs, and everything else that's been, that happens at some of these protests and at Standing Rock, we will continue to defend the land no matter what you do to us. We will be here till our dying breath. And there's something very powerful about those lessons. And wherever I go around the world, Indigenous people do that. They're standing up. Yes.
We have a question.
Okay.
On there when you're done.
I'm done.
Okay.
You answered the question.
Michelle Holzman.
So actually, I just wanted to acknowledge how relevant this conversation is to us in Lane County, Oregon, because while we have 2 ballot measures that have yet to see the light of day for the people that should be seeing it, we have written yet another one, and it's the Lane County Watershed Bill of Rights, and it would protect all of the water in Lane County, all the watersheds. So, and we're very proud of it. It's a beautifully, elegantly written piece. But COVID happened, and so we didn't ever get to really get out there with it. Fortuitously, because we realized that we well-meaning, well-intentioned white people had written a great thing, but didn't talk to the traditional stewards of the county. So, we're sheepish, humbled, and trying to walk it back a bit. And so I was given the permission from my steering committee to talk to a Native guy that I know, and who Orkhorn actually, he was one of the 3 first people who spoke at our last public presentation. So I had 20 minutes before I got on this call, I was talking to him. And I said, hey, Joe, I know I don't want to, you know, if you want to say no, but we've written this thing. I kind of want you to look at it. You know, we really realize that we have, we didn't get the traditional ecological knowledge perspective. And what do you think? And he says, well, I'll look at it. He said, but you know, you really don't write those things before you talk to us. So, you know, he said, I'll look at it. And I said, be honest, you know, if we have to go back to the drawing board, I'm really glad to see some Lane County people on this call, because I think we just have to be really prepared to get to listen to the response that we asked for. So, hey, thanks, Shannon. I mean, it's so damn relevant.
Thank you for saying that. And we do ask communities that we work with now. I mean, we make it harder to work with us. But it's that there's a group in the Bay Area that wants to, before we'd even do a training, you know, we said we need certain amount of people of color and Indigenous people, and if that means you should scholarship those folks to the training, but also to ask permission for the training from the speaker of the Lishan Ohlone people here. And I live on occupied Ohlone territory here in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. And so it's part of the learning curve that we're all on. And one of our communities actually did go back, and they were, you know, there was a fire, and it set back progress quite a bit. And they actually took that time to reset and start in a different way. And I know that's disheartening, but we're living in different times now, in terms of recognizing that we are all in this together, and that that there are, when respected, there are protocols of the first people from wherever you live, that can be really powerful and be really meaningful and really enrich the campaigns that we're working on in ways that you don't even know yet. And yeah, does it make it easier? No. But I'm really happy to hear that you've had that conversation, Michelle. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I feel like so many of us, you know, we went through this thing where a threat came, disaster in our face, and all we thought was, tell them the facts, you know, somebody else will save us. And I feel this wonderful revolution of back to spirituality. I mean, back to the connection and the, I mean, it's slowly growing, you know. I mean, we're to get back to the land and know that we are so connected. I noticed that Nancy had said, so impressed that the Ponca women are at the forefront. Where will the ceremony take place that you're going to next week?
So it's a 3,000 mile trip, round trip in a car for us to get there, but it'll be their powwow ceremony area is right on the banks of the in Ponca City, of the, I think, the Arkansas River, and I think it'll be there that we hold. There'll be several. There'll be a cedar ceremony, a lot of traditional ceremonies, and a feast, a water ceremony, ceremony that's just for the Women's Society, and those that are part of bringing all the community together. And I don't really know what to, what to expect to some degree. I'm honored to be, I'm kind of just amazed to be leading my little bubble, my little COVID bubble, and driving out there and driving through this beautiful landscapes to get there. Some prettier than others, some parts prettier than others, but so it'll be in Ponca City on Mother's Day. They chose Mother's Day as a way to launch it. But you know, the work that they'll be doing and the work that we'll be helping them do is also you know, everything from learning how to do water testing to you know, building a network of women and other Indigenous communities along these rivers, and all the way up over time to their original territory on the Missouri, and working with tribes up there, because those are their initial homeland. So in some ways they'll be following the Trail of Tears that they were forced to walk backwards in a I mean, what a really empowering way to reclaim that connection with land. So yes, it'll be in Ponca City on Mother's Day.
Is that open to the public then, or is it?
Yeah, come on down.
I was thinking, you know, might just you know, take a Sunday drive, see what I could check out.
Yeah, if you're actually interested in coming, you can message me and I'll give you some more information on exactly where to go. Are you coming, Kara?
I don't know. I might hitchhike.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Susie. This is Tish. Thank you, Shannon. Shannon teaches me so much always.
Ditto.
I admit, you know, I'm a colonized white woman, and it's like all that crap that's like loaded in layer after layer and layer in my brain. It's like, yeah, it's so nice because you do, you know, you're patient because you understand it, and so you help me. And one of the other things I wanted to say too is, I mean, and it's complicated. You know, a lot of this is complicated. I mean, I think, yeah, white people, we do have like this romanticized version, you know, of Indigenous people. And so, you know, and then it's like this shock that they don't all have the same views either, just like all white people don't have the same views and all Black people don't. But, you know, it's like, and so it's like difficult separating this fantasy and, you know, what we've been propagandized to believe and, you know, bringing it all together. And I was listening the other day to a podcast, I think Lindsay sent it to me, and it was about, you know, Black liberation movement. It was, and they were talking about this group that's buying up land and creating like their own like Black community, and they want white people to donate money in that so they can buy more land and all that. And then as I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking, well, you know, and I agree. I mean, yeah, they've worked this country, and a lot of, you know, the wealth that's here, it's because of their labor and that. But okay, now what happens when the Indigenous people come and say, well, wait a minute, that's our land? You know, so you're in that same system of we're looking at land as property and buying it. And I've talked to a couple of people affiliated with tribes that they're trying, some of them try to do the same thing. I know in New Jersey, there's a group trying to do that. You know, they're buying the land back. And so it's just very complicated. And I think we need to get going.
Very complicated. In fact, the Sogorea Land Trust, which is the on Ohlone land where I live, they have it's called the Shumi land tax. Shumi means gift, and they've been for years asking people, you know, on at tax time, but anytime, to gift, to make a gift of land tax, essentially for the land that you're living on, whose land you're occupying and living on. And you know, they're using that, they've created this other rematriation project to rematriate the land. And it's a cultural learning space. We had a webinar with Tom Littlebear Nason recently of the tribe down in Monterey area, and I'm completely blanking, the Esselen tribe. For those of you who have been to Esselen area, and they're bought back, their land. And so there are a lot of different strategies as well about that. There's a whole movement called the Land Back Movement that is about, Indigenous people. They don't want their land back in terms of a piece of paper and, get off white people. But what they want is recognition of their spiritual connection to this place, and to shift the larger culture, which is what we're all trying to do, to begin to live in a way that is more in balance with the earth, and also in recognition of the special relationship that they hold with that particular land. So I know a lot of people, it's like the defund the police movement, land back movement sounds really scary to a lot of people, because me, I'm like you, Tish. I'm a white kid from the suburbs in Sacramento. I did not grow up with all of this kind of culture and understanding, and it continues to be an education and opportunities for growth every single day, and that's what we're all doing, and we all have to start where we are. And we're all working and we're all moving this journey together. So there's no shame in anybody's game, no matter where you live or how you started your activism and your work. It's healthy and good to know about where other movements for liberation, like Black liberation movements, Indigenous movements, have come from. Where did they get their strength to really just put their bodies on the line in ways that a lot of white communities have. They're like, we're so, well, the law said we couldn't have it, so I guess that's it. We'll just accept it. And then of course there are you rebels who won't take those answers either. So it's about finding our way to the connection and understanding that there's also a lot of trauma that and things that have that keep us sometimes from feeling safe to reach out and be in community with people who are angry at white folks, or think that we take up too much space, or talk too much, like me. So we we all have. It's all about how do we reestablish and reconnect humanity with the way we're supposed to live with the earth. And it's a humbling experience, no matter how you slice it, and no matter where you're starting, and no matter who you're working with. How we're going to shift the system is going to take the work and knowledge and expertise of everybody, and everybody fighting and working together. And I do feel like I've learned so much about how to do that, and how to do that with courage. There's nothing harder, as Ben, than when we first went to Haskell College and spoke to an entirely Indigenous audience talking about rights of nature, to a very skeptical group of people. In fact, so skeptical that we had to have an Indigenous person sort of okay who we were before we took the stage. Give these white folks a chance to explain. And there's really no harder. That was one of the hardest and more intimidating rooms, I really wanted to, there were times I really just wanted to run out of the room. But
It was humbling. It really was, Shannon.
it,
Humbling, and it was a real good learning experience too.
yeah, but as organizers, every time you have a hard crowd, a hard room, we've all been there. It definitely it opens up your heart a little bit, and it also toughens up your skin a little bit. And you keep going.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
I mean, the work you do is absolutely amazing. And I'm hoping that if there's any way that we can support you from the NCRN, that you would feel comfortable to contact us. I think our strength is in the numbers, so if there's any way we can support you at all.
I really appreciate that. And I think, I personally would like to, sit in on another call that you guys have and actually just listen to everything that everyone is up to. And just if you ever feel like you're having a call, that would be, invite me, and I'll, I'd love to just listen and learn from all of you.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because next month, Fair Districts of Pennsylvania is going to be talking to us about issues with election. And I think one of the things that they talk about is just the voter suppression and how things like that are affecting, that's in the works now, but how our rights are being taken away from us just from the political level of our actual vote, and what they're doing to keep suppression. So that would be on May 28th, Susie? May 26th.
May 26th.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
May 26th. Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to make another one because we actually have a retreat on that day. But please do keep me in the loop. I really do want to learn from all of you. It feels like I'm, we're all community here. We know the exact, the struggle. The struggle is real.
Yeah. Well, I love that we're working together on things, and I think we have a lot to learn from movement rights too. So please let us know if you're hosting any other events that we could participate in and learn more as well.
Well,
and it's 9:05. So if I think we need to wrap things up, even though I could probably have this conversation. Well, I know we could, Shannon, for another hour.
with everybody falling asleep. Tish is already in her pajamas. But we are also looking at ways to, as we the Ponca Rights of Rivers is kind of a big project over the next couple of years, and I think that connecting with the NCRNs would be a really valuable. I think there are lots of ways that we can connect, and as well as looking at connecting the communities and tribes that are recognizing rights of waterways and things. So I think that there are lots of opportunities ahead, and congratulations to all of you on all your work. And I look forward to being a quiet mouse on a call coming up soon. Thank you.
And have a great road trip, Shannon.
I'm super excited about it. Thank you.
Post
Thank
pictures
you.
for us to see.
Yeah, lots of pictures.
Yeah.
Lots of pictures. Absolutely. There's a lot of time to take pictures when you're traveling in a car for 10 hours a day. So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.